T23 with Eric Parker.
Good morning. Thank you for being with us. Last Wednesday, mourners celebrated the life of Tyre Nichols, the man whose death on the streets of Memphis at the hands of police has captured the attention of the entire nation. 5 police officers have been charged with second-degree murder in his death. This morning, civil rights attorney Ken Krayeske is joining me to offer his thoughts on what happened and its implications for policing here in Connecticut. Ken, thank you for being with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Eric, for having me on.
I want to say first, you're working with BBB attorneys. You're going to be opening a new New Haven office with them.
Yes.
So I want to give credit. You've been working on your own, I think, for a while.
Yeah.
Now, you represent people with claims similar to what we see Tyre Nichols' family preparing to bring.
It is what I do.
We all said after Sandy Hook, this is a turning point. This is as bad as it can get. Change will happen. We've seen these police. We've seen Eric Garner. We've seen George Floyd. We now see Tyre Nichols. As someone who represents these families, is this a turning point?
No. It's heartbreaking, it's frustrating, it's maddening, and it's angering because everybody thought, oh, the body cams that we got after Michael Brown's murder by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri, would change policing. And instead now we have the perverse reality where they're broadcasting and they're giving us a release date of snuff footage, essentially. 6 cops beating the daylights out of a guy, and it's awful. And as we sit with this and we try and understand what we're going through, we thought George Floyd might be a turning point. And none of the legislation or hand-wringing or meetings with protesters and Black Lives Matter activists have changed the policing. And in 2022, we had 1,100 Americans die at the hands of law enforcement. So that's more than 3 a day. 365 days, 3 Americans a day on average are killed by police. This is a structural problem that only goes away when we begin to reimagine what public safety looks like and what a society without police looks like.
A lot of people will say what you just said, something about defunding the police, a society without police. Charles Blow in the New York Times, way back in 2013, wrote, "The idea of universal suspicion without individual evidence is what Americans find abhorrent." That seems to be on the track of what happened with Tyre Nichols, a suspicion without any individual evidence. What's the change that needs to happen then?
We need to reimagine what public safety means. And we need to reimagine how we come to terms as Americans with the fact that violence does not solve violence. And public safety should mean housing, health care, education, an end to hunger. And when we build communities, it's shown that states that took Medicaid money had drops in crime. So then why aren't we investing in more public health and divesting from police structures? Like body cameras were a huge boon to police departments and body camera manufacturers, but has it made us more safe? No.
So then obviously the pushback on that would be that there's a need for police. And we saw, of course, the straight up ambush of police officers in Bristol, another heartbreaking tragedy. We see shootings happening in schools. We see police officers risking their lives to protect us. So there has to be some kind of in between. I mean, I noticed you just on your own Twitter feed you were at the Lunar New Year celebration in New Haven, and you said, I can't help but look around and think there could be a shooting here, and you're looking for escape routes. Obviously, there's a need for some kind of protection in our society. So how do you find that balance? You can't just get rid of them, Ken.
Well, if we're talking about abolition, I see us in 1718 on course to an 1864 abolition of slavery, or 1863 is the Emancipation Proclamation, sorry. So we're a long way away, but we have to start reimagining a better world. And how do we quell my fear of being in a mass shooting while I'm standing somewhere? Well, maybe gun regulation, maybe we should have a national movement where we're going to decide to get rid of military-grade weapons in the hands of civilians. Like, why does anybody need the killing power of a Roman legion? They don't. And so this is what I'm saying. We need to reimagine the way we think about public safety and what it means to be safe in our communities, and have communities that are seated with positive nutrients as opposed to being all of the resources being drained by police.
So going back to that Charles Blow column in 2013, he said it's like burning down the house to get rid of the mice, but that's also getting rid of the police, right? If there's bad actors out there, isn't there something you can do about the bad actors as opposed to abolishing the whole system? Is there an interim? Obviously, you know, you're not going to be able to go up to the state capitol and say, let's get rid of all the cops. So what's the interim step, Ken? As somebody who represents these families, is there something that we could do, some regulation we could pass, some small incremental change that might make a difference in your view?
Well, there's incremental change is all we have. And I don't ever think that we're going to suddenly wake up with the sun tomorrow morning and say, oh my God, the police are gone, because there's a lot of thought that has to go into and changing hearts and minds to understanding how we can reimagine a new world without state-sanctioned violence being the primary way that people interact with the government. And so I would say eliminating qualified immunity. Okay, let's put in red light cameras and let's stop police officers from being involved in traffic stops. The #1 way that people get involved in the criminal justice system is traffic stops. Let's get police back to police work. I mean, Hartford's unsolved murder rate is atrocious. New Haven's unsolved murder rate is atrocious. So let's get police back to doing police work instead of creating pretexts to stop people based on their race. Like, you know, Andrew Clark and the Institute for Municipal Policy Research at University of Connecticut have done a lot of research into the Penn Act and shown how police use race as a pretext to stop people in their cars. So let's get police out of the business of traffic stops.
We only have about 30 seconds left. Obviously, there's lots of people watching this who are friends with the police officer, family with the police officer. There's a lot of good people doing this work. Is there something that you can point to here in Connecticut and say, we're at least in a better situation than maybe some other places?
You know, I guess because I litigate every day against lawyers who represent police officers, and it's where the rubber meets the road in the state monopoly on violence. And when I deal with this, I'm like, maybe we're slightly better, but then, like, I deal with the prison system, and I'm like, we have babies born in Connecticut prisons. We're no different than Georgia or Alabama. So I prefer not to see us as an exceptional situation. This is a national problem.
Well, it's an important perspective. I know you represent a lot of people involved in the system. Like you said, the rubber meets the road. We appreciate you coming on here and giving us that perspective. Ken Krayeske with BBB Attorneys, thanks for being with us.
Oh, thanks so much, Eric. I appreciate it.
Coming up later in our Sunday Spotlight, Connecticut's Winter Wine Trail. We'll talk to a local vineyard owner about that. And up next, Dr. Manisha Jutani on her priorities for the Department of Public Health and what happens in May when the COVID emergency ends nationwide. We'll be back right after this.